everybody. This is Stephanie Ruper. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Naked Humanity podcast, where we try to figure out what it means to be human. Today is episode number 54, and I have on David Garrigues, who is a yoga teacher and has been now for more than 20 years. I just got off the chat with David, and it was everything that I hoped it would be. I have actually for quite some time been looking to bring on a specialist in yoga who would not only be able to talk about the practice, but be able to talk about yoga in today's world, how it's become so popular. Is it helping us meet the world's needs? Is it helping us become better people? What can we do instead? What kinds of different approaches are there? And so David and I really get into it and unpack all those sorts of things. It's really wonderful. And I want to read you a little bit about David's bio and his life. It's very fascinating. Like I said, he has been working in this world for a very long time. So you must imagine that there has been so much change in the landscape of yoga, in the last 20 years or so. So David Garrigues is an internationally recognized yoga teacher and creator of the Asana Kitchen video instruction series that is one of the leading online yoga learning resources on YouTube. True. David travels extensively throughout the US, Europe, and India, offering workshops, in-depth studies, and retreats. David also writes passionately and eloquently on the subject of yoga. He has written Vayu Siddhi, Secrets to Yogic Breathing, King of Asanas, Mastering Head Balance and Inversion Principles, and Maps and Musings. David has numerous online courses and writings on his website that his students around the world utilize to progress in their Hatha Yoga studies. For almost 30 years, David has maintained an enthusiastic personal practice that is dedicated to asana and pranayama study in the Ashtanga tradition. His intense dedication to practice and to teaching and inspiring his students forms a diverse, soulful, open-hearted, and seriously global learning community. It all feels very real and exciting to me after having spoken with David. I encourage you to just get to know the world of yoga a little bit and see what's going on, what your options are, and let me know what you think. Get at me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Stephanie Ruper if you have any comments or questions or ideas about this episode. And I will, of course, provide links to David's website and other materials in the show notes so that you may also contact him directly. Thank you so much. And here is David. Okay, David, hi.
Hi there.
Hi, it's lovely to meet you. Do you mind if I ask where in the world you are? I'm actually not sure.
I'm at home in Philadelphia.
Philadelphia, born and raised. Okay.
No, actually not born and raised.
I know, it just happens.
Yeah. Born in Seattle, but Philadelphia is home for now. It has been for about 10 years, and I'm actually not here, or I'm gone a lot. So it is a question you have to ask. Where are you right now?
Yes, and the question of where is home is always very tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so to sort of kick things off, could you just tell me a little bit about what you're doing in the world right now and how you sort of got to be in this position? As long form as you want.
Yeah. Well, I'm teaching yoga, and it took a long time to get to the way that I actually do it now, because I've been teaching since pretty full time since 1996, and so there's been a lot of evolutions and changes, and evolved to what I do now, which is mostly I travel to groups and present kind of a whole picture of yoga. And so I'm not like involved in people's daily practice per se. I'm coming in and giving people kind of context for the daily practice. And so I'm sort of an advocate for yoga, or a speaker about yoga, and I try to represent the full spectrum of what yoga is and can be, or how it can serve a person, from like the physical to the psychological and spiritual. And so and and the way that you phrased the question, I like that. Oh, my cat is making an appearance. This is Bunny.
Yay. Hi.
Yes. Hello, Bud. And so because it's a very funny thing. It's very it's a challenge for me, what I do, because it involves speaking for one, and that's challenging for me. I'm pretty introverted and shy, by nature, but then sort of I feel like the universe has sort of pushed me into this role of advocating for yoga, and in a certain perspective that is not really being represented either. And so it's a little bit of a different or independent take on yoga that I'm bringing. And particularly, I teach within the Ashtanga yoga. It's a certain lineage or branch of yoga, and I'm offering something a little bit alternative, or a different perspective on how to go about the practice, and so there's a certain activism involved in it, per se, and so.
That's great. So have you sort of always been in a position of having an alternative view, or, this sort of counter unique perspective, or did that evolve over time, or is that sort of had to emerge recently? Always. Okay.
In some ways, I for a longest time, I've always wished for something else. Like I wished to be a doctor with the house in the suburbs and the family and the BMW, and I even wished to be like a really upstanding kind of conventional member of the Ashtanga lineage or the branch, and it seems like it just never works out that way. That one way or another, I end up as more of a trickster, kind of on the outside, sort of saying, "Hey, wait a minute, look at this over here." And
right. So what is the status quo? What is more normal, and what is the difference in your approach?
Well,
it's huge. I know.
Huge, but Ashtanga is a very set practice in a lot of ways. So it's you do the same series every day, 6 days a week, and it's a very codified system. It's really well established what you do, and then there's certain rules that are pretty set in place, and they have to do with the body, like movement and posture, and they have to do with etiquette and kind of attitudes and things, and I just see a lot of need for interpreting the system differently. The rules that are governing how to use the body, how to there's kind of it's called vinyasa is the term, and so there's all these transitions. That's part of what makes Ashtanga unique, is that you're constantly transitioning between doing the postures, and the transition are formal, and they're very kind of relentless and repetitive, and so I have a lot to say about how to do those vinyasa, like how to transition, and then also what you do when you're in the asana, the posture itself, and then also just like even the culture around what you value about doing the pose. And well, I'll just tell you some big differences. Like, it's a funny thing because in Ashtanga, it's like almost frowned upon to give instructions about how to do a posture. Like that is something that like it's like you don't do that in Ashtanga. You don't like talk about the rotation of the joints or even the process of how you get into a pose and things like props are taboo.
Mm-hmm.
So if you struggle with a pose, the answer in Ashtanga is not to like grab a block or get something to sit on or and I just don't agree.
Why not?
Yeah. Because it's you can take like very problems that are very simple to make a positive impact on or solve by pulling out a prop or by giving verbal instruction. And it's just, I don't know, there's an illogic to the to some of the rules that I don't, I just.
Yeah. So your practice sort of involves more self-reliance or discovery, or sort of through these routines and consistently trying every day without leaning on things that you sort of you do gain from them. But is it sort of this process of more radical self-reliance that is meaningful for you?
Yes. I
Okay.
love that radical self-reliance.
Yeah, you can.
Like that's exactly like that's my whole attitude towards something like Ashtanga. So it's a method that's supposed to teach you self-reliance. So it's supposed to teach you like you're supposed to like look at these rules and see their usefulness, but then change them or bend them or adapt them if that's what is needed for your individual circumstances. And you need the freedom to be able to do that. And not only do you need it, but it's like you're meant to have it, right? That's why you even do yoga. I love that you're radical self-reliance. That is exactly it. Like, exactly. And you see this, and when you're asking, like, what am I doing in the world? Like, I feel like this is a huge part of what I'm doing in teaching yoga because it's this time that you reserve for yourself every day. And I am an advocate. So a lot of my kind of audience and people around the world that follow me or learn from me, they practice at home alone. So there's not as many that are going to studios and things. Because it's partly that is because I'm such an advocate for taking that time for yourself, withdrawing, and then just being with yourself and getting to know you and in all these really basic ways that yoga gives you the gift of being able to explore, like your breath. Just the most fundamental thing about having a body and being human in a body, right?
Sure.
Is breathing, standing, sitting, and just focusing inside.
Right. Do you? So obviously, yoga has become very popular, right? And so. Has the kinds of yoga that's become very popular different from this more radical self-reliant approach? Like what are the goals there? I hear a lot of, like, I've done YouTube yoga, right? And I've heard a lot of like acceptance, and you're sighing, right? These things are not necessarily bad, right? But this is sort of there's a difference, right, between this more popular movement and what you're doing.
Yeah, and the sigh was not exactly like annoying in a way, because the honest truth is I don't pay very much attention to it. I kind of know that it's out there. I get little glimpses here and there of, but in a way, I don't think it's fair because I don't know. I don't go to a lot of yoga classes right
Mm-hmm.
now, and so I can't really speak to it. But it's also part of my idea about how we should all proceed with our paths, though, and something I really value, which is to positively go into what you find, right? So what I'm finding is I'm advocating for that. So I'm not really against something else.
Right.
I'm for something. And
That's so beautiful and needed,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so you're sort of, you have this message and it resonates with some people, right? And so you do it and help people with this particular method. And for the others, if it works for them, that's great. It works for them.
yeah. And it's challenging though, because certainly people come to my classes and my workshops, and I can tell that they're learning something else, and they're being told other things that a lot of times I don't agree with, and that I think are holding them back. And so I have to negotiate that, you know. And people also do, they want to compare. They want to know, like, well, so and so told me this, and now you're telling me that, and I try to avoid speaking to what the other person is saying because I don't really know about it, but I do know about what I'm saying, and I can give you information about that. You know? And I can say that I've explored the puzzles and the various problems and kind of circumstances that come up in a daily hatha yoga practice extensively. Like that's what I do all the time. And so I definitely am in there grappling with the things. And so I have some answers that I feel are really helpful and workable. And
yeah, that's fascinating. Did you find yoga and become committed to it because it helped you in these specific ways that you're trying to, help others?
Yeah. I see, and I stumbled into yoga. I found it at a really early age, just by friends teaching me it by chance. And then I practiced it on my own for almost 10 years before I ever took a class. Just really free form, and always outside. I did it outside as this communing with nature and breath, and it was like what actually got me to a yoga class was running. I was running, started distance running, and so I was getting really tight. So I actually ended up with a yoga class, and I fell in love with it. And then I've always been very kinesthetically tuned in. I was just always been into sports, and I was really into skateboarding. That was my big passion when I was a teenager, and so I'm very connected physically, and so that is a very natural thing for me. But the other thing is I was very lost in going to college, and then after college, and I, because yoga is something, it's more than physical to me. It's like amazing combination of skills or knowledge that goes into it, and I could not figure out what to do, for work. And I spent 10 years searching and just suffering and struggling. I was a waiter, and I didn't even know how much it was just challenging me, that I wanted meaningful work. I wanted to do something that was really important to me, and it was partly why I couldn't figure out what to do.
Yeah.
And I took career counseling for 1 year, like, you know how you take a few aptitude tests or something, and I was in it for 1 year, and wasn't any closer to figuring out what I wanted to do.
Mm.
And I feel like partly the reason why was because it was so unique. Like what I do is so unique and strange in a way, and it's big. It's not a small thing, because yoga it's at heart, it's a spiritual teaching, and it's a spiritual discipline. And yes, in modern yoga and even in what's called hatha yoga, it's very physical practice, but that's only a little piece of what it actually is. And so it took me a long time to come around to what I think is like a perfect combination of things for me to work, because
Yeah.
it wouldn't be enough for me to like be like a physical therapist or something. Like,
Sure.
you just need a kind of.
So you talked about the spirit and the physical, and you said this is spiritual work, and I'm deeply interested in that. What is it? What is your experience of being like a spiritual teacher, right?
Yeah.
And like, how do you feel? Do you feel like that's a great responsibility, right? Like, how do you sort of how do you train yourself and then feel certified or whatever, like legitimate as a spiritual teacher? And, how does that process work for you?
Yeah. It's terribly challenging and terrible.
Okay, good.
The
Good
respons-
answer.
yeah, the responsibility and the feeling like I have any authority or anything to say, or that I actually have any spiritual maturity, enough that I could be a leader. Like, all of these things are haunting and crushing the weight of them. Like, it's a very, very demanding job in that. But I also try to be very real and honest as much as I can, and I try to sort of limit the scope of what I teach to very practical things, that so that the person does come to this radical self-reliance. And I feel that yoga, it really is a technology. It's techniques that the person becomes skilled in using for themselves, and then self-discovery happens. And so that's what I'm trying to convey to people. And yeah.
How close is what you do or what you sort of teach to the tradition of yoga that stretches back centuries, right? Like, do you try to stay loyal to traditional precepts, or have they been reformed in your training, or are you reforming them? Like, what is the relationship there?
So I think you just said them all kind of right there in your summary. Like, I try to respect what came before, try to know about it and study it, and I try to kind of recreate or actualize that. But I also very much feel that it's a frontier. Like, it's so much is unexplored. And that's one of the most amazing things about every aspect of yoga. And it's just like, I feel so lucky or so fortunate in a way, that because of how untapped it is. And that's another thing, though, that I feel like I have kind of loosened my own sense of creativity or something, to the point where I can take the basic things and decide, no, because they can seem like, no, these are written in stone and this is yoga, but me, I feel like, no, they're not written in stone. They're these they're beginnings, and there's so much to open up into, and that you have to as a modern person with modern circumstances, you have to discover new things about old practices. And it's one of the most amazing things about the whole thing, and the most exciting things to me about them. And so I teach. It's not just it's very technical, physical things, and more like interpreting philosophy,
Right,
as well.
right. I want to definitely get to that closeness between mind and body in a second. You were talking about the sort of modern reinterpretation of, old texts and traditions. And I think something that's so remarkable is that this parallel happens, right? Like that's happening in Christianity all the time. It's happening in Islam. It's happening in Buddhism. It's happening in all the traditions, right? And in the academy where we study religion, there's a number of people looking at yoga as it's being practiced, like in America or in the West today, and looking for like parallels. Is it being kind of like a religion? How is it like a religion? How is it not? But I think this thing that you said, and especially for the teachers who are more like loyal or seeking loyalty to, the ancient traditions, like that's so real and so beautiful and so important. Like we can't reject a practice because it's modern, because we're modern, and
Yeah.
we need to, but I like the connectedness too. I don't think we should ever disconnect from our past.
Yeah, and also it's just wrong to assume that any human being, no matter how wise and what they offered, like that they didn't make mistakes, or
Mm.
didn't have blind spots, or that they covered all the ground on something. That is just not so, right? And so it's yeah, and it's just the nature of it,
Yeah.
and it's just a beautiful part of it, right? That
Mm.
each person has something new to bring to it and to discover about it. And it really is built into the yoga too. That's the other thing. Like, just, if you, I don't know how deep we'll get into it, but just the idea that, like, so that part of what you're trying to do is kind of not identify with this personal individual self.
Sure.
And you're supposed to become a seer to the whole thing. And the whole idea of seer, it's a unique seeing. Like, that's the whole thing, is that each person has a whole different perspective to bring, each one that's born. And so, of course, everyone's going to see something different and come from a different view. And so somehow we have to validate that and incorporate that into the history, or what happens in a religious path or a spiritual path like that.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah, I love that. And sort of circling back a little bit to, what you were saying about being an embodied practice or a technique, right? Like who was it? Foucault would have called that like a, technique of the self. Um, there are like we are bodies, and it's sort of, maybe this is a part of why yoga is, it's not the whole reason, but yoga has become very popular as we're sort of realizing today that, like, oh yeah, we're not just like minds and spirits, right? We're sort of whatever, a
Yes,
messy
no,
thing
but body
together.
is included.
Yeah.
Stephanie, no, this is so. See, and this is partly what I bring. I feel like unique to, like, because there's still so many people practicing yoga that don't recognize the value of the body and the material world.
Mm.
And that's what's so strange about me, in a way, is because, like, partly I say that I went kicking and screaming into yoga. Like, I didn't want to be a yoga teacher.
Mm.
Like I felt like I've resisted it, and it's taken me more than 20 years or to actually like almost in a way resign or go, okay, yes, the universe chose a great thing for me to do, and partly it's because I love the world. I love all material things. And I know that there's so many problems that can go wrong with excess and consumption and corruption. And, we can see the world going crazy. But at the same time, there's this is part of what I feel like is that the answer to these deep problems, it has to do with combining the material and the spirit and finding a balance and honoring and respecting both and seeing that we belong as part material. And so to me, that's part of what needs to evolve in the perspective of spiritual traditions is the rejection of the material.
Well, people are, I think, we have, and this is so culturally embedded, but it's so easy to be afraid of the body because if you're a body, then you're meaningless, right? We have this idea that your spirit has to be disconnected from your body. It has to be, higher, able to commune with God or heaven or what have you. Like this is the tradition we've inherited. And so I think it's
will lead you into sin.
Exactly.
All this. Yeah.
Yeah, but there are so many beautiful ways, right, and including yours, of being a spiritual human within an embodied context, and actually, as is the case for you, practicing embodying yourself and using that as a way to actually make you more spiritually aware.
And at least trying. Like to me, there's a pretension. It's kind of pretentious in a way, but. I don't know, but because I don't know, it's so easy to be into yoga or whatever, or some kind of spiritual thing, and not be a nice person or not be kind or loving, like that can happen, and yet there's something noble and courageous about calling it spiritual and trying for it,
Yes.
And
yes.
Even if you're going to really mess it up because you're human and you get angry and right. And all the things that are.
Yeah, sure. So what is it about your practice, if you can boil it down to a thing or two or three, that can actually help you, develop this self-awareness and this more world awareness and, be more, be more kind, right? Be more peaceful, be more kind. What is it? What is the fundamental aspect that helps you do that?
Well, I think it's a big answer. There's a lot to it. But I think that like very basic things, like if you can carve out however much time per day for yourself, that really is for you, then just that in itself calms you down and just makes it easier to be in the world and also to do the duties that you have to do that maybe are challenging or unpleasant or not exactly what you would want to do. So I think there's just that time for yourself. Then there's also taking control. It's amazing. You control your body to a certain degree, and into a pretty large degree if you really get into it. And so it's funny because you can influence your digestion, and sometimes a lot of being in a bad mood is just, indigestion or feeling all wow, and so it's a kind of purification where you clear out and physically and mentally. And so you just come to a happier state.
Mm.
And like breathing, when you really breathe, you influence your hormones, and you like well-being comes from these. You can see like Iyengar, he had that famous thing how he says you come to a crossroads where you can use yoga for boga, which is like pleasure and experience, or for yoga, for like spiritual awakening. And I mean, yoga is like a drug. It's really amazing to breathe and come into the present moment and go into trance and do postures, and you feel good. If you go about it with the right spirit. I mean, yeah. But
Yeah.
So there's that aspect of being a kinder person. But
Sure.
but there's also, so there's two things, Stephanie. I'll try. I don't know how, if I'm going too long.
Go for it. Go for it. I'm here.
So one thing is that, well, that you're trying to come to this spiritual perspective, right? So that's this idea of seer to the world. And the seer is really different than the person that identifies with the individual body, the individual ego, and all the little concerns of this body. Because when you're a seer, you understand the interconnectedness of everything. And so all of a sudden, the well-being of the entire existence becomes your concern. And that's where you get ideas about love and kindness and kind of charity, and making sure that and justice, and these very important qualities that we all need to be practicing diligently, right? And there's so much division, and so to start to embrace this a wider perspective will definitely make you a kinder person. But lastly, see, and this is one of these places where I feel like I'm, I don't want to be presumptuous, but in a way adding to yoga, which is that Dharma is a really important word, and it means cosmic justice. So, and it means like spiritual principles, but it also means like duty or calling. And I feel like each person that becoming a seer, it's like you're asked to become a visionary. Like it's almost like a shamanistic practice where that what really is fulfilling and what makes you having a happy life and not lashing out in anger or in being hateful is if you get in touch with your vision for the world. Like, what is my work here? What is my duty? And so yoga's like that. It's like it's a vision quest. And vision quest, it doesn't just happen once. Like you have the idea that when you're a boy or a girl and you're going to go into adulthood, right? You would go out into the desert for 3 days and have a vision, and then come back a different person and have like a role to play within the culture. But I love it because in one thing that when Joseph Campbell wrote about that, he said that a person can vision quest as often as they like, as often as necessary. So it's not just 3 days out there and then you come back and I know what my mission is. No, with yoga, I mean, you literally go into the cave once a day and kind of identify where you are and who you are and where you want to be going. And the more that you're able to like get in touch with that and feel empowered and do those kind of take steps towards doing your work or being the person you want to be, then the kinder you're going to be out there and find a place of belonging,
Yeah, I think those are admirable goals and probably quite effective, ways to go about them. They've been tested for many, for eons, and again, like reformulated for the modern world. And I
Yeah.
think, returning to the body, and this idea you said about like vision questing every day, I think that that's really important. And I've seen so many people post like meditation challenges or yoga challenges. Like, I did this every single day. And while that might just be like cute social media fluff or whatever, there's
Yeah.
also something deeply transformative about committing yourself to that grounding and that perspective and that awareness, like again and again and again.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. And then also like when you do that, it's a super challenge. Like to get on there day after day is, and partly it's a challenge because of your shadow. Like
mm,
you have to look at your anger. You have to look at the ways that you're not satisfied, and your grief, and your confusion, your uncertainty, your doubt, all of these things, and be with them. Like for and some
mm,
and like ready answers don't necessarily come. So sometimes these things can last for quite a long time, and you but you kind of have the discipline and the consistency, and slowly and a perspective takes shape where you you get some peace.
mm. Yeah. Yeah. That's lovely. So, this is really hard to believe, but we're actually starting to come up on time. And I
Yeah,
have a feeling that you might be able to come up with a thing that you might like, a recommendation, or um, sort of prescription that you might have for somebody who is interested in this sort of thing, but doesn't really, hasn't really put their toes in the water yet. Like,
yeah.
what do you have to recommend?
Stephanie, you know the amazing thing. I love this. Sorry, but so what I did for that 10 years when I had no teacher, really essentially, is I did it's called Surya Namaskara. Surya is the sun god, and Namaskara is this prayer, or this acknowledging. Um, and I did that only, pretty much. And so, and it didn't, it's like 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day. Right. And so it's very easy information to get now. You can go right on YouTube. I even have it on YouTube, a couple of versions of Surya Namaskara. There's different ways to practice it, but that would be one really easy way to do it, is just decide I'm going to give it a go for 5 to 10 minutes a day. Another way would be just there's a yoga studio on every corner now, is just to take a class and try. Um, and and there's no need for a big ambition to
Mm,
start with. And also, I would recommend trying more than one studio or more than one teacher, just because there's so many different types of yoga, and there it might take you more than one try to find something that makes sense to you. Um, um, and I would say that really it's why I like the sun salutation, actually, because it's movement with breathing, and then there's a little bit of holding the position. So, and this is really what the basis for discovering yoga is, like
mm,
using movement to bring your breathing alive, and which is something that even even if you run or play basketball, your breathing, it comes alive, but it's not the same if you're really paying attention to it and super conscious of it.
mm,
And so um, and then and that leading to stillness. So moving with breath, and then just coming into little moments of stillness, and starting to discover that almost every human being will actually gravitate towards that if you give
mm,
it a chance, because it's just so foundational. so so basic to being a person.
Yeah. Okay. So, and also you like Instagram and stuff, right? So where can people find you if they want to learn more about your approach?
Oh no, I don't know my Instagram.
Seriously? That's awesome.
I,
Or like your website, right? Like what's your website?
davidgarrigue.com is my
Okay.
website.
I'll
And
put a link to it in the show notes. So
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, lovely.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed speaking with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. This was really lovely, and what I have been looking for a yoga aficionado or teacher to bring on. So thank you a lot, and thank you everybody who's listening. Like I said, I will provide a link to David's website in the show notes. And thank you all, of course, so much for tuning in. So,
Actually, Stephanie, can I? I don't know if
one
you.
more thing, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, if I have a lot of learning resources online, I have courses and I teach all over, and I do have those active social media sites. So those are also be good ways to get into yoga, and I so I could help you to get into it too, even though I don't have a home studio where I teach every day. But
Right.
so
Well, yeah, no, I think that's great. And most of us look on social media first these days anyway. So,
yeah,
yeah, I will scan the internet for links and make sure I include them all.
yeah.
Everybody heard it from David. David, thank you so much for joining us. This has been really great.